Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, starseeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Hi, everybody. I have Lisa Kavanaugh here with me today to talk about her spiritual and psychic awakening process, as well as some of the new energies and new paradigms that are being ushered in this very intense period that we call 2020. So hi, Lisa. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be with you today.
Yay. So it's interesting because this is actually my first time connecting with Lisa myself. The connection was made through a mutual acquaintance. So I'm going to be on the edge of my seat as much as all the listeners learning about you. I would love to hear about, who you are and where you are and what you do, anything you'd like to share about yourself.
Sure. Yes, I hope I can live up to that. So
No
I
pressure.
am, yeah. So what I do is I am an energy, first and foremost, I'm an intuitive energy worker. And I also am certified in the area of hypnosis. And in my previous kind of life, I worked in the field of addictions counseling. So basically, what I do right now is I offer energy work, and I also do things like past life regression. And also, I even have kind of started getting into the space of, which is a shamanistic practice. And I have not been trained as a shaman, but I've started getting into things like soul retrieval and that sort of stuff, which is just come up organically because it's a kind of an evolution of the uh, the hypnosis regression type work that I do,
Mhm.
and certainly with the energy work, it all kind of goes hand in hand. But I don't know that I would define myself as being one particular thing. I think that these are all tools that I kind of have at my disposal. I'm also really right now working on getting into the space of doing more stuff like this, where I'm speaking more. I do teach energy work as well. And I'm actually working right now with actually our mutual acquaintance. We're working on a website, a platform that is called the Rise Community, and we're hoping that we will have that out in the next month or so. And that is what our intention is that it's going to be a space for people who are on the quote unquote awakening path, or really kind of coming into a space where they're looking for answers or looking for meaning, more purpose in their lives, that we're hoping that we can provide resources, information, panel discussions, and things like that to help people feel less alone. Because the whole awakening journey, and I'm sure, Amy, you can relate to this, can feel very isolating, especially in the beginning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're hoping to create a space where people can find support, they can find a sense of inclusion, and they can just feel. Sometimes when you're coming through the awakening process, you feel like you're losing your mind,
Yeah.
because you're kind of stepping out of everything that you've ever kind of been taught, everything that you felt is true. Is there starts to kind of become this internal conflict that nags at you constantly, right? And it can cause distance with relationships, family members, all kinds of fun stuff, even your career, all of that. And I think that more and more, as I think they're going to see more and more people begin on that path, and it can be very daunting. We're hoping to create a very safe, sacred type space where people can really be real and get information. So I'm really excited for that to unfold.
Yeah, that is so exciting. That's so exciting. I love that. That's kind of been my mission too, with just starting this podcast, was like just remembering how, yeah, alienated I felt when I was going
Yeah.
through my spiritual awakening. And it felt like an entire decade, probably,
Yeah.
yeah, probably a little bit over a decade, that I just felt like a total crazy, like, not, I kind of mostly knew that I wasn't crazy, but
Yeah.
compared to, air quotes, everybody else, I
Yeah.
felt like, what is wrong with me? Why am I so, like, why can't I just function in the world? And yeah, it's definitely isolating, and yet it's like such a beautiful, I don't know, it's such a beautiful part of the human experience for everyone who kind of chooses to open up to it. The sort of
Hmm.
remembering that there's more, and remembering that you are more.
Yeah, and I think that there's for me, certainly in just my own experience, from the time I was very young, I always had this feeling of being an observer, not being a participator. So I was kind of in life watching it, but not really part of it. I always felt separate or different, or like I couldn't quite get motivated by the same things, or I couldn't quite fit in. And so and this is from the time, I would say, as long as I can remember, I always had this feeling that it was something just wasn't right. And I think what can happen too, and I think a lot of us go through this, is that when we're very young, if we come in with that sense, um, when we do try and express certain things, there can be a messaging that will come through, whether it's through, parents who are well-meaning, who just don't understand, or, it can be friends, or it can be teachers. You can pick up this internal messaging that, because you kind of can get, what I got was, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Like, there's something wrong with you. Because for me, even as a young kid, I would find, kids are, we think of kids, right? Small kids are full of energy and everything. And for me, I found that going to school would wipe me out. And it was like, I'd get home from, and we're talking like, you know, early, like kindergarten type stuff, preschool type stuff, where after being around people all day, I would be very tired, very drained, and I wouldn't want to participate in other things. Like, I wouldn't want to play with friends and do those things after school, because I just wanted to be alone. I was wiped out. I was tired. Birthday parties were they were almost excruciating for me sometimes. It was like sometimes it was these things were overwhelming for me, to be around all those people and all the noise and all the things, and I would get wiped out. I'd actually physically feel drained.
Hmm.
And but the messaging I would get from other people around me, who I think came from a genuine place, they just didn't understand. It's like, what do you mean you don't want to go to this party? What do you mean, you don't want to play outside? Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So from an early age, and I'm talking like 3, I started to feel like there was something flawed about me. My understanding of the world too was, I remember, even with, when we're talking about, I was raised Catholic, and so I had, my father's family was fairly active in the church, and so I remember going to masses and things like that when I was very young, and just watching some of the things that would happen in the church, and it just, something about it was very kind of off-putting to me. Or I would be asking a lot of questions, like, why do we have to stand, and why do we have to kneel? And I certainly, as I got older and they talked about God, or God is this you know I don't know, kind of this depiction of God, like almost like you'd be punished, or you were a sinner, that sort of thing,
Hmm.
never resonated with me. I always used to think that, I used to, in my mind, very clearly would think, that's not true. None of this is true. It's not true.
Yeah.
And so I was very at odds. I felt oftentimes, I was very at odds, even with, you know, eating certain foods wasn't my preference. I couldn't stomach it. And so I always felt like I was at odds with other things. You know, the norms were not, I couldn't understand money in terms of, you know, why do people struggle so much with money issues when there was so much money out there? When if someone had a problem with money, why couldn't someone else just share their money with them? You know,
Mm-hmm.
do you know what I mean? Like it was all very, why is everyone afraid to talk about money? Made
Mm-hmm.
no sense. Like all these things that just, so at a certain point, I think I got fed up with it all. I got fed up with feeling like there was something wrong with me, and I started to adopt a persona. I created this version of myself that I felt would be acceptable to the world. And I didn't want to feel things deeply. I just wanted to be normal. And so I effectively chose an identity, and I stuck with that for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, I crafted, and this is very, again, very young. And I don't think I understood it, obviously, at the time what I was doing, but looking back, I can certainly see as young as 6, 7 years old, deciding I was going to be this person, not that, not what I am, this person. And so, you know, coming through that and living in that way, you know, from the time I was about 6 all the way up until I was probably in my 30s. And then to dismantle that identity was, it was very painful. It was very scary because didn't know what was underneath anymore, but I knew there was something more to me. And it was almost like you had to excavate that under all of that kind of conditioning. And there was a lot of shame. I realized there was a lot of shame I was carrying about who I truly was. And I always had this sense of there was something flawed with me, and I knew things, and I could perceive energy, and I understood people, even what motivated people. And I could read like almost their emotional signatures before they didn't even really have to speak to me. And so these things were, they seemed, like I felt burdened by them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I love the way you describe that excavation process, and I think that's so true,
Yeah.
like how scary and
Mm-hmm.
painful it is to
Mm-hmm.
like, and a lot of people I think just decide not to, like they get, and they're completely allowed to decide not to. But when you
Mm-hmm.
get to that point where it's the choosing point, and it's so scary and it's so painful, and when you've like really what's the word I'm looking for, like you've taken on these messages of like there's something wrong with you, and that shame
Yeah.
that comes with it,
Shame.
it's
Yeah.
so scary to look at who you actually are rather than the identity construct you've adopted. Because like,
Right.
what if it's as ugly as everybody kind of made you feel it was, or unacceptable, or what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what a scary, oh,
Mm-hmm.
human beings
And
are
not,
so brave.
yeah, no, it's very scary, to kind of come into that space. But I feel like it takes a lot of strength, and it takes a lot of courage to be able to kind of peel back those layers and even to get to a bit of the true essence of what you are. And I think we're always evolving, we're always
Yeah.
growing and changing, and there's always more to learn. um, but I also feel the more you kind of come into yourself, the more it falls away, right? So then there's that period of, you know, for me, I was working in a very corporate job. I always was a huge fan of certain things. Like I came up in the fashion industry. I worked as a model. I was heavily influenced by the quote unquote beauty industry. This awakening started to really happen, and those things they were no longer in alignment with me. They no longer drove me, and I felt completely empty. It was like all the things that used to mean so much to me no longer mean anything. And I didn't know, like, there was this feeling of, you know, so everything's being stripped away, but I don't know what I'm going to replace it with. Like, I don't know what this new version of me, how am I supposed to live? How am I supposed to make money? How am I supposed to be? You know, because everything feels phony now. Everything feels uncomfortable. It feels forced, right?
Hmm.
And so it was incredibly challenging for me going through that phase, and all the things I used to use to kind of medicate myself no longer worked, right? And I was always running. So when I left kind of the fashion industry, I thought, well, I just want to help people, which was valid. I want to help people. So I decided to go back to school and to study addictions counseling, because I thought that will be more meaningful for me. And when I got into that space, I was working in a private rehab facility. I did enjoy it. I did find it a bit draining, but and then again, I found I was at odds with some of the paradigms, the idea of, a lot of the programs out there, they assign a label to someone and they say, you'll stand up and say, hi, my name is Lisa and I'm an alcoholic. I'm powerless. I couldn't sit, that didn't sit right with me. I didn't
And affirming
believe
that
that.
over and over and over again.
That's right. And I felt like there was in that space, it was a very getting stuck in this space of, and I know that these programs serve people and I'm not taking away from those, but I think that at some point you need to graduate onto the next phase, right? You do the healing work and then you move beyond it, and you're not defined by, a substance, or I couldn't. And so again, I was at odds again with the system that I was working in. So that was another just like completely what they call it in the tarot. They call it, a tower moment.
Yeah.
Again, it was like, oh, I can't even do this. Like, what can I do? Right.
Mhm.
So it was, yeah, it was incredibly painful. And I think that I'm sure that there are people who knew me back then who probably thought that I was the most flaky, kind of unstable person out there, because I just was looking for meaning. I was looking to find a space and my space in the world, but I was looking in the wrong places, right? I was still holding on to a lot of convention. I still I wanted to help people, but in an acceptable way, right? In a way that society would say, well, that's valid.
Oh, I
Being,
so relate to that. I just, up
yeah,
until January 1st of this year, I was working as a midwife for that exact reason. And it was very
right.
similar. Like, it was beautiful, beautiful work, like a tremendous honor, very sacred work, but
Yeah,
very, very limited by paradigms that I felt were actually like damaging to the
yeah,
birth and pregnancy and mothering and family bonding process. And but people kind of think you have, like, look at you like you have two heads when you kind of try and speak about like the toll that certain protocols are taking
right,
on people's outcomes. And but it's like that's crazy talk, and we can't
right,
prioritize energy. What is this energy thing you're talking about?
right.
Yeah. And but it's hard to when you just want to help and you just want to be accepted and you're looking for conventional ways to do that,
Yes.
still cinching
Yeah.
yourself off.
Yeah. And I was frantically, so that I thought that was the answer, right? Addictions counseling. That's the answer. I could identify with shame. I could identify with self-medicating. I could identify, I grew up in a household where I grew up with someone who was extremely sensitive to energy and used substances to medicate himself. So it made perfect. I'd be perfect. I could relate. I understood it. But then when I got in and I was asked to, someone was coming to me and they're genuinely struggling because the certain models don't work for them, and I meant to tell them that they're not trying hard enough, when energetically my intuition could see that this person really, it just wasn't resonating. They needed more.
Hmm.
And I could feel it and I understood it, but I was meant to tell them that they were in denial. I couldn't do it, so
Yeah,
I had
well,
to leave. Yeah.
totally.
And I
Yeah.
felt like a failure, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go again. Just can't get it right. Something again, all the messaging that I thought I'd work through about not being good enough or being flawed hit me in the face again.
Hmm.
Right. So it was a long kind of process. And then it was interesting because I went back and I just abandoned it all. It's too draining. I'll just go back and I'll make some money. I just gave up. So I went back into a corporate position, and one morning I was sitting in my office, and I started to literally learn Reiki. And I'd had these thoughts before, and I know that a lot of people listening to this will resonate. It's like it's a thought that comes out of nowhere, seemingly nowhere, and it hits you with a certainty about it. And it's kind of it's not your, it feels like it's not your thought. It just comes in with such like clarity and but so like direct. And I was sitting there and I kept hearing, you need to learn Reiki. And I was like, over and over and over again. And I used to, when I was a kid, I used to call them crazy thoughts. Oh, it's my crazy thoughts, right? Coming in, right?
Mm.
And so I was like, oh, I don't want to, I don't even know, learn Reiki. I don't even know if you can learn it. Like I had Reiki done a few times and I knew there was value in it, but I didn't really get too deep into the mechanics of any of that, right? So I was like, it helped me, but I wasn't really interested. And all of a sudden it was learn Reiki, learn Reiki. So anyway, I looked into it that day. I got booked into a class. And then from the time of booking the class to the actual day of the class, I think it was about a month in between. And during that time, my father was diagnosed with lymphoma. And at the time, it didn't connect the urgency. So my father, he was very, very intuitive, very sensitive. He was a complete, the definition of an empath. And, he had this energy about him where kids and animals used to just like gravitate towards him and follow him around. And he was a really real person. Like you could come into his space and you would instantly feel comfortable because there's no judgment from him, but he struggled with a lot of things because I think he was overwhelmed. So anyway, he gets diagnosed. I learn Reiki. I do the class, and I believe he'd had his first, I think, a round of chemotherapy, and he was very ill. And I remember he had a terrible, like an eye infection, and I was there and I said, Dad, I learned this thing called Reiki. Do you want me to try it on you? And he was at a space where he was like, I'll try anything. He didn't really understand what Reiki was. I don't know if at the time I fully understood it either. So I sat him down at the dining room table, and my mother was there, and she was sitting at the table, and I started working on him. And I know certain people really respond well to energy work. Like I think some people respond physically, like they're wired that way. Like they go exercise really hard and then they feel really centered. And then I know some people who are energetically wired, and so they get energy work and they all of a sudden feel just centered and like everything's okay, like that weight's been lifted. So my dad was one of those people, but he didn't know that. So I worked him at the table. I put my hands on the back of his head, and he said, Lisa, I feel like you're sucking the pain out of my eyes. Well, how are you doing this? And first, I just had learned this. I'm like, I didn't even expect it to work. And the redness and everything was literally coming out of his eyes. My mother was just floored. So anyway, during the course of his illness, he was struggling with a lot of anxiety and everything. One thing that really helped him helped him sleep, helped him with anxiety, was Reiki, was energy work. And even at the time, I still didn't make the connection until after he passed away. And then looking back, I thought, oh, wow, that's why. That's why I needed to help my father through the transition. And it taught me so much. And then it just kind of kept progressing. I did all my Reiki levels and I did my master's level. And I didn't even want to do my master's level. I kind of did level 1 and level 2, and I thought that's enough. I'll just do it on people when I feel like it. It was kind of a hobby at that point. And I'm like, that's enough. I don't want to teach it. I don't need to do my master's. And then again, one morning I woke up and it was like, you need to learn your master's. And finally I did learn my master's. And after I took my master's level in Reiki, literally all hell broke loose, I want to say. Just everything that I thought I really knew, all of the things just opened up in the most kind of chaotic way imaginable. And I started having, after the master's level, in fact, the night before I went to do the master's class, and I had heard a little bit about the term starseed, and I'd heard about, extraterrestrials. And I mean, I'd read into some of that stuff, but certainly that was nothing that was part of my experience, at least that I was consciously aware of. And then the night before I did my master's levels, I had an experience that was so unbelievable. um, I remember just kind of lying there, and I remember grabbing my phone because I was kind of like, is this really happening? And to check the time. And I heard my daughter was in the hall, and she was in the bathroom outside my bedroom. And the next morning I was like, were you in the bathroom around 3 in the morning? And she said, yes. And I thought, oh, wow, that really happened.
Wow.
Um, and so that everything then was like we were hitting another level of um stuff that I had no understanding of at all, right? And all of these things then started to explode around me again, where even in the kind of the confines of the new age kind of community, I had one teacher who taught Reiki, who I did my level 1 and 2 with, and I had questions about energy. I had questions about. I knew there was light energy, but I also knew there was duality. I know that where there's light, there's dark, and I just intuitively knew that. And so in a class, I asked her, well, what about dark energy? And she basically said to me, we don't talk about that because when we talk about that, we attract it. And again, I was like, oh, great. Like, I can't even fit in here. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because I'm asking about dark energy, but I'm being told that if I talk about it, I'm going to attract it. And that didn't seem right to me either.
Yeah.
So I then became also kind of disillusioned with certain factions within that community, because I felt like when somebody's going through what we call, I think that people call it, awakening, you go through a dark night of the soul and you feel depressed and you feel a lot of anxiety because that old construct of you, that old identity is dismantling, and relationships are dissolving, jobs are dissolving, you don't know how you're going to make it through, you don't know who you are or how to be, you just know that you have to let go of all of these things, and it's very daunting. And I think that in a lot of, not in a lot of new age kind of communities, I think that the old way was kind of like, well, just focus on positive, be grateful, focus on the good things. And I think that that does a disservice, because then people get the message that if they're feeling depressed and they're feeling stuck and they're feeling overwhelmed and anxious, that somehow they're not high vibrational enough,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in somehow they're not doing it right. And I always kind of felt like if you have to kind of surrender and sit with the feelings, because their emotions are just energy in motion, right? That's what the word means. It's energy in motion. So we're meant to feel things as part of the experience of being, here at this time in a physical body, and in this level of duality. I think, it's part of the process. It's a gift to actually be able to feel all these ranges of emotions. And
Absolutely.
I think that when we're trying to run away from them, or we want to choose, we only want to feel high vibrational emotions. We want to feel, grateful. We want to feel joy. We want to feel love. And we want to feel peace. But I don't want to feel shame, and I don't want to feel anger, and I don't want to feel jealousy or any of those. Those are low vibe. I'm going to stay high vibe. Right. And so that construct I was seeing in the community, new age kind of community, when I was first kind of coming in, and I was like, to me again, I was like, that doesn't feel right to me. If you're truly empathetic and you're truly coming from the heart, and you see someone in pain, you know, I would never tell them that that's low vibration. You're attracting bad things in your life if you stay in that vibration. Through the law of attraction, you're bringing it into your world. That seemed it just seemed wrong to me, right? So again, even in that sense, I was like thinking, oh wow, like I can't even now. I'm not making friends even in the new age kind of community, because I want to talk about these heavy subjects, because I felt like they were there and I was experiencing them, and I felt like even just experience with certain phenomena we call, extraterrestrials, or entities, things like that I was experiencing. I found it really hard to find a space, even within the new age kind of community, where I could talk about that honestly without kind of being labeled as dark or negative or, all of those things. Um, so it was a real process for me. And I think now coming into it, really kind of coming into a space where I feel like I'm in a space where I'm really myself, even the past month with, the shifts in the world this year have been tremendous. And I think we've got, new energy frequencies coming on to this planet that have never reached this density before. And it's bringing all of this kind of what I call it miasma. It's kind of dark energy up to the surface so it can be witnessed so that it can be healed and released. I just feel like there's a sense of rawness that I've been feeling over the last, I'd say, month or so. And I feel like there's even layers, like if I'm going deeper and deeper, there are still things that I'm holding on to in terms of like an old construct. They're illusions of what I think I need to be, what I need to look like, how I need to present myself so that people will not think I'm completely off my rocker,
Yeah.
How can I kind of show up in a safe way without causing too much disruption? How can I speak my truth but speak it safely type stuff.
Hmm.
Even those things are coming now and they're hitting me in the face. And it's like, wow, like, okay, so now look at it. Now I'm even in a space where I'm looking at everything I've done or everything I do in my practice. And I'm questioning if it, like, it feels like it needs to even evolve. Right. So it's not easy and it's, painful. And although I can see everything that you go through, everything that we experience that's uncomfortable is really up because there's always so much learning and there's so much growth in it. But in the moment when you're going through it, it doesn't always feel, it feels hard and it feels confusing and it feels raw. um and so, I certainly, for myself, it's funny, even today when I woke up, I've been feeling that kind of real like rawness and feeling very tired and just, and I thought, oh great, and I'm doing this podcast interview, and and I thought, you know what, you're just going to have to go on and you're just going to be who you are,
Hmm.
right, in that moment, and that's okay. Because as much as I want to sometimes put a mask on or try and be a different way, I'm finding it's so much more damaging to me, draining to me, to try and pretend that I'm in a space that I'm not, so that people will, I don't know, that people will think that I've got it all together, right?
Totally. I feel like, yeah, so much to that. I feel like it's a gift actually to show up where you're at.
Yes,
And like, I mean, there are
yes,
times too when it's really not, you can feel it's not the aligned actual right time and you just have to reschedule, and that is what it
sure,
is, and it's perfect too. But
sure,
whenever we show up for things as we are, without trying to
yes,
like curate an image around it, it's such a
yes,
gift to everyone,
yes,
because
yes,
this is such a bizarre paradigm that we find ourselves in, um, really, really amplified by social media, but it obviously existed
uh,
prior to social media, where we want to keep up appearances, but like for what?
yeah,
For who? It's
right,
like the idea of
right,
like anti-aging. Like, who are we
yeah,
fooling? We live in the physical realm. Like, time's
right,
the thing. Aging happens to all of us.
right.
Why?
Yes.
And it's so, yeah, I feel that so much. But it's hard too, right? Because it's a strong paradigm. And sometimes it's hard to show up and be like raw and unfiltered, so to speak. And
Mm.
but it's so liberating. I know I hired my first coach last year, and I was attracted to her because she would show up and do these like live videos with
Mhm.
just like her mess hair, like her messy bun that was messy bun in the morning and that completely was disheveled by the time she got on to do these, and like, sometimes no makeup on, and she just wouldn't, it was so refreshing to me. It was like, oh yeah, and you're amazing. And like, I don't want to have that feeling like I need to look a certain way and my environment to look a certain way and have everything be so curated and polished in order to be taken
Mm-hmm.
seriously and for others to see my value. Um, yeah, so thank you for
Yeah,
being as you are.
I completely relate to that. And it certainly, I think what really brought my attention to some of that stuff is, as you said, the social media space, right? I think there's nothing trickier, there's nothing harder than trying to quote unquote market yourself and market yourself as in the context of spirituality. Because marketing at the core to me suggests that we're creating an image, we're creating a version, the perfect version of ourselves. And I think when you're looking at the aspect of spirituality, I mean true kind of the true essence of who you are, there's no perfection in it, but that is the perfection. You know what I mean? There's the beauty in being imperfect and embracing yourself as who and what you truly are, no matter how you look or feel or whatever, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I think when you can allow yourself to get into that space, particularly for women, I feel when we can allow ourselves to be in that space, then we make it okay for other people to be, other women to be in that space. And there's
Yeah.
so much, it's such a relief.
Yes.
And you start to see the true beauty, and then you start to see all the stuff we've been sold, right?
Uh-huh.
Even with if you've got a social media page and you're trying to make everything look pretty all the time, right? I get it, but to me, in the past couple months, it's been very daunting for me, because it's like that old way of doing things, just it doesn't resonate and it's not working for me. But I'm not quite sure what does work yet. You know what I mean? And so the only thing that I can do is try and show up, you know, as authentically as possible. Um, and but it's a scary thing to do. But I feel like, like I was saying, as this kind of new paradigm, we're coming into a new paradigm where if we want to create the new, we cannot build it on the foundation of the old ways, right?
Yeah,
And there's no
absolutely.
playbook for this, right? So it's like there's no manual that will tell you how to do it. And I think that's where you've got to go in and got to go into that and dig deep and just figure out, show up in energetically, even in the space that you truly are, because it allows people to do the same. And then that's very infectious, I think, right? And for me, that's where I feel like I'm really coming to terms with all of the things, the marketing, all the image stuff, all of that stuff, and I'm seeing that that's no longer, it doesn't resonate with me anymore, and I can't try and force myself to be that way, right?
Mhm.
As I say this, though, we're doing this interview, and I said to you, I said, I don't want to do video. I don't want to do video today. I didn't want to get myself, what I call presentable, right? I thought I'll just do the audio, it'll be easier. But I'm aware of that, right? Like I'm seeing that. And um, I feel like right now it's incredibly challenging, but there's also a real freedom in it if you can kind of really kind of begin to even see that there's so many layers that even in this new age community is built kind of um, on a foundation of an old system. But even that now I feel is kind of crumbling. And so with things like marketing your services, I think there's a big difference between marketing and basically putting out an offering. So marketing is an image to me, but putting out an offering is saying, this is what I offer. These are the services that I can bring to you. This is the value that I bring, but in a very honest, straightforward way, right?
Yeah, it's more like broadcasting your energetic frequency.
Right. And then there's either a resonance with people or
Yeah.
there's not. And
Yeah.
that's okay. Right.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that those are things that I don't know. For me, they were things that I think I kind of knew, but I wasn't really putting them to practice. And now I'm trying to figure out how to kind of how to really shift my own practice into that kind of space, right? Where I'm not trying to market, I'm trying to just put out an offering, right?
Yeah.
And that's just one instance. And then the whole manifestation thing has been something that's been in the forefront of my mind. And what I've come to realize personally, and this is just my personal feeling on it, is that for me, when I'm focused on manifestation, and I've been taught, or I've been coached into, doing things like vision boards and those sorts of things. And, but it's so that you can focus on the external outcome that you want, but then every day you got to feel like you already have it and all of those things. And I understand it. But for me, there was always, I don't know, I found it very stressful to do this kind of manifestation work. There was almost like, for me, there's a bit of an aversion to it, and I couldn't understand why. And I literally, this past couple weeks, I've been really kind of just thinking that when I try to manifest things, even though I'm trying to focus on a feeling, I'm still wanting an external outcome to some degree. I'm
Right.
still putting up this vision board and saying, I want this, I want this, I want this. And what I've come to realize, that when I'm focused on the external, and it's coming from a space of fear or lack. And so the very thing I'm trying to manifest, I actually think that I'm blocking myself from achieving. If I were to surrender and just say, I'm here to be of service. You're asking, I'm going to give blind faith. I'm going to follow my intuition. I'm going to do my very best to show up as myself and come from the heart and be who I am. And I know that some days are going to be challenging. And I know that it's not always going to be high vibrational rainbows and unicorns, but I want to be of service. But not to be a doormat. And I want to have a life of beauty and all of those things, but I'm not going to attach to an external outcome or external things to bring that to me. I'm just going to be in the space of service. Then for me, that is where I do the manifestation. And if there's an ease to it, and there's a surrender and a trust without being tied to an external things, because I think a lot of manifestation, I do think, for me anyways, comes from a fear or a lack. And I also think that when I'm fixated on anything external outside of myself, I create resistance, and I'm blocking myself. So these are things that these modalities have been present or very popular, certainly in the New Age community. And for me, I'm starting to see personally for myself that they're not working for me in the way that maybe they would have worked a couple years ago. It's just, to me, that's not the space that I'm in. And I can no longer kind of, when people are working with me, I can no longer kind of propagate that. I can no longer endorse that, because for me, it doesn't resonate anymore.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. And it just, like, as you're talking, I just keep sort of getting this feeling or this image that, like, humanity is going through, like, tower moment after tower moment after
Mm-hmm.
tower moment,
Mm-hmm.
on individual levels, on community levels,
Yeah.
on like national levels and global levels, like at all levels. But really, it's kind of like I don't know, I don't want to be too dramatic and fear mongering, but it's like the forest fire that clears away the old growth.
Yeah.
And in a way where it's not like the old growth is crap, but just like we're complete with the old growth, and it has to be cleared away, and it feels so confronting and scary and awful and intense,
Yeah.
and people are
Yeah.
suffering through the process. But it is the creating the fertile ground for new growth of this new paradigm, and like an expanded understanding of like who we are and what the fuck this whole human experience is about,
Right.
and like what we
Right.
can actually do with it.
Right. And I think that's, yeah. And I think the thing about it is that, like I said, like, I don't feel like there's any playbook for this. It's all kind of, I feel like for me, a lot of this just comes up through trial and error, like through trying things and then realizing it's, for me, this doesn't resonate, and being okay with that, and just not always needing to know exactly why something doesn't resonate with me, but just feeling like that's just not meant for me. It doesn't feel in alignment, and letting it go,
Yeah, and
you
just
know,
honoring
and
that.
right, and trying things, and seeing that even when you try something and it doesn't work, that's okay, because there's such growth in that, right? And I
Yeah.
think for me, I think right now we're in a space collectively and individually of kind of surrender, because no one really, I don't think we really know exactly. I think we know that we're building something new, and I think there's a lot of hope and there's all of those beautiful things, but I don't think we actually, we don't have all the pieces to the puzzle. You know what I mean? So we're
Yeah.
kind of feeling it out as we go along. And, I think that we're not used to that. That's not really the way that things we've been taught. You need to have a manual, you need to have a blueprint. And I don't think anybody does.
No, and
I
that
don't,
that
yeah,
paradigm is so limiting, right? That like the
yes,
set of instructions you have to follow, like as if there's a way to like a way to achieve anything is so limiting. And this
yeah,
reminds me of, I bring everything back to childbirth because midwife, but
uh-huh,
it reminds me of childbirth because at the beginning when all this happened, I remember feeling this excited energy, like I knew this was big. I knew this
hmm,
was big and that we were birthing something new. But
hmm,
it's like when you first go into labor and it's like early labor, like your first few contractions, and you're like, oh my God, it's happening. Like the baby's coming.
yeah,
You're so excited. And then now we're in this point, like around 4 or 5 centimeters, where we're like, when is it going to end?
right,
Please
right,
end it. And then all you can do is surrender, or you can either fight it or surrender. But surrendering is like really the actual only option that will get you through it and allow it to do what
uh-huh,
it is doing, as uncomfortable as it is. And then the beautiful thing is
right,
born, but who knows how long it's going to take? Who knows how intense it's going to be? We just do not have that information. Even your midwife
yes,
or your doctor can't predict how it's going to go. It's so,
right.
and we just have to stay
It's
in
in,
the moment.
I love that analogy because, I also feel like, the body knows intuitively what to do.
Yeah.
It does, it knows. Logically, we might not know, but I do think that we do know, but we just get the information as we need it, type thing. You know
Yes.
what? Because it might be overwhelming. So you just kind of go along and do your best. And you get up the next day and you do your best and you
Yeah.
learn and you grow and I think I think for me, as long as I come from a genuine place of service, not only to others, but to myself, like I self-love and, trying to come from that space of not being hard or judgmental on myself, so then I can extend that to other people as well, even if I don't understand maybe some of or I can see that the things that they're doing are kind of maybe not, that are coming out of fear, but it's okay. Like I don't have to judge that. That's their path. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And to have respect that everybody's kind of has their own journey and is on their own timeline, and that's okay.
Hmm.
um I feel like even the even and even the we always are in the new age community, depending, or what I've always felt is that there is partnership. We do have partnership with other forces, however that resonates or looks for the individual, but for me, I do feel like there is a divine kind of force, and to me, I there are certain universal laws that you cannot escape, that they just they are, and I feel like I've always felt that energy around me, and what I think that for a long time I thought that energy was above me. It was, I maybe, that I wasn't equal to that energy. And I think that what I've come to understand is that when you get into a space of of service to others, you begin to partner with that energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can partner with that energy and trust your intuition, there's so much protection and so much support for you that even in the moments where I've been like, I'm not even, I don't really even know where the money is coming from at this point, I always seem to have enough,
Yeah. Yep.
right? So, but it's logically there's can be moments of terror and panic because it's like, you know, I don't even know, like, I don't know where the money, like, I don't have enough clients right now, or I don't have this, or like, you know, but I've gotten into a space of just kind of trusting when I get into, when I feel it very that strong intuitive hits coming through just to do this or do that. I find that I always end up following the guidance, but I can choose now. Do I want to do it now? Or do I want to come back and have to do it 6 months from now when I've taken all the other kind of path and it's been a long, yeah, probably more exhausting process, or do I just want to trust and do it now? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just, you know, and it's hard. It's not easy. I also think that there's a lot of us right now who are really going through this and really feeling this because we are going to be able to take our personal experiences and share them and help the other wave of people coming up behind us so we can be a support to them to help them come through it, right?
Yeah.
So
Because
yeah,
we're
so
all in this together.
yes, yeah, that's how I feel. And you know, it really is, I don't know, like it really is a magical time in a lot of ways, but it's also raw. Like it can be real scary and real raw, and it can take a lot of trust and going back and forth, you know, back and forth. Like some days you want to just kind of hide and you want to crawl back into this old way of being because it feels comfortable, right? And you know, it's not easy, not easy at all.
No, it's not. And we just have to give ourselves grace for like
Mhm,
all of the ways that we experience it and meet the moment. Just like,
mhm,
yeah, we're going through something without a playbook and it's
mhm,
intense and
mhm.
there
And
there is no right way to do it.
no, and even the notion too of being busy, being productive, you know, that's something that I've had to consciously kind of dismantle, even because, you know, when we are constantly feeling we have to be busy, a lot of times I think that there's a level of kind of trying to escape. We want to keep busy so we don't have to feel or we don't have to think too much, and also to prove that we're worthy, you know. And when we are in that space, for me, what I find is then I'm not listening to my body. Sometimes my body lately, and there's no rhyme or reason to it, I am tired. I mean, so tired. And I'm like, yeah, but you got to do all the things, because if you don't do all the things, then what did you do all day? And then you're not really, you know, valuable if you're not being productive. And so that messaging is like, it doesn't work for me anymore either. And it's
Yeah.
like, right? And so I know a lot of friends of mine who, you know, that are kind of, we're in the same kind of space. We're in holistic health and stuff. We're all saying like, wow, am I tired? Like, I don't feel like doing anything. And having to be okay with that, right? Like
Mhm.
trying not to force yourself. Like I know that we have responsibilities and things, but I'm also, I mean, there are just times where you need to know, like you said earlier, you need to reschedule. You
Mhm.
need to, because you just need to honor your body. Because I think our physical bodies are going through uh, a tremendous transformation right now as well. And all this new energy, these higher dimensional frequencies are coming onto the planet, and the body is like a conductor kind of connecting this energy into the earth. And so the body is trying to figure out how to house this energy. And I think it's almost like, I think of it as light bulbs, right? Like the body's used to getting 40 watts, and now the voltage has been turned up to 80 or 120, and the body is, you know, like trying to integrate this frequency, this energy on a cellular level. And so if you're not, you got to be very compassionate and loving with the body, because the body, or else you can blow your circuits. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And so I just feel like, and you gotta, like, and if you want to have peace with any of this, for me personally, I've had to drop a lot of the judgment of, well, I'm not being productive, but I am being productive
Yeah, like
by allowing my body, yeah, to
we're doing
rest.
work. It just isn't work
Mhm.
as is like, popularly considered to be like worthy and a good justification for our existence. But like
Right.
that's one of the deepest programs and the most insidious ways of keeping us
Hmm.
small that I've encountered, because it
Hmm.
affects almost all of us so
Yeah.
deeply. We learn it so early on, and it's
Hmm.
just evidenced everywhere. Like so many people, the huge majority, have bought into this concept that we must justify our existence by
Yeah.
productivity and like, earning our keep and whatever, and that
Yeah.
you're not just, you can't just be. That's
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like what I've always kind of felt, or what I've understood, but it was that you're born, when you are born, your worth is inherent.
oh, is
You
it?
are worthy.
Yeah.
And that
Like
there's,
newborn
you're
baby.
just, yeah. And to run around trying to prove your worth constantly is not, is not necessary. It's just conditioned, right? It's that you just being born, and you have a birthright. So you being born, you have certain birthrights that you should be experiencing. Like it's your birthright to, to be provided for, to live in peace, to, have access to nutritious food, to have
Mhm.
comfort, a space to live. All of these things are to have joy, to experience love. All of these things are, are your birthrights. You don't need to prove your worth, um, in order to receive these things. And so I think that obviously, we're born, and everything that we're conditioned to believe is the exact opposite of that,
Yeah,
right?
I couldn't agree more. Oh, Lisa, this has been such a beautiful conversation. I
Yes.
I will need to have you back on so we can carry it on, because I just feel like we could probably talk for 3 solid hours and
Oh, totally.
just,
Yeah. And
yeah.
I feel like, imagine if we actually planned a topic to really
I know.
to really talk about. We just kind of flew by the seat of our pants here. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, but this was really nice. It was a really nice way to sort of like, well, I got to benefit from getting to know you. Unfortunately,
Oh, me
you didn't
too.
get to know
Yeah,
me.
I
But
think it's always just such a beautiful, such a relief, such a beautiful space when you connect with somebody and you can just talk honestly. Like,
yeah,
it's just so right. So
yeah.
I thank you for that. Like, it's so uplifting, and I'm so grateful that, that we kind of connected. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I'm definitely gonna have to send our mutual acquaintance an extra big thank you
Yes,
for putting me in
yes.
contact with you.
Well, he actually said to me, he said, she asked me to do it, but I kind of thought, well, no, I'll let Lisa do it, because I just thought I'll see how that goes for you.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, that's fair. Fine.
well, it went
Yeah.
very well.
Good, good. Yeah, I just hope, my hope is just that if, someone hears this and they're kind of struggling, I just, people, even, people who are actually, like, actually certified or doing holistic work, and, are out there, and kind of, where, you know some people like, I always think, like, I have to be perfect in order to help other people. I should be in a perfect space, and I think that's false. I think the more imperfect, but the more honest and true you can be, is that's the space that really helps people, because that's what people need. We don't need perfectionism anymore. We don't need all this false imagery of what it should be and what it means to be, quote unquote, spiritual. I think what we need is people to just be themselves, and allow other people to have the space and freedom to be themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
So
thank you
good.
so much for your time and your energy. And I will include your Instagram and the other contacts that you gave me in the show notes for this episode so people can connect with you.
Right.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening, everybody. If you enjoyed this episode, you enjoyed this interview, then please share it with anybody you think would resonate. And if you really enjoyed it and you really love us, then please take a screenshot of yourself listening to this episode and then post it to your social media and tag Lisa and I, because then we'll know you were listening and it will absolutely make our day. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
that would be great if you're willing to do that. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. Bye. Thank you so much for being here with me on this episode. I appreciate you more than my words could ever say. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and share, and I will catch you on the next episode.